Huzzah! All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to part two of what are we calling this again? You came up with a great,
I mean, just off the top of my head, I was thinking Black Babes Abroad. It just sounded fun. So I liked it.
and we
That's
are.
that's
Okay.
what we are, right? I
Um,
don't know. It's easy, it's explanatory.
Episode
So
two, Black Babes Abroad, the
mm,
trophy.
mm.
And oh my goodness, I literally just said, okay, hi, my name is Shayna. I'm a journalist, content creator, and I'm currently living in Barcelona, Spain. And this is
Hi, I'm Candice. I'm a writer, content creator, marketing guru, spiritual baddie, and I'm currently living in Denmark.
Huzzah. Okay, so we are going to first talk about, also, if you want an intro to us, I will put right around here, wherever here is, the video, our first video where we talk about, whole lot of stuff about moving abroad, more about like the emotions and like things that like answering common questions that people have, especially marginalized people have about the moving abroad process. And now we are getting into visas. It sounds boring, but my God, it is the thing when it comes to moving abroad.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. And
you
I think
don't
it's the
have
biggest barrier too in people's head because it is the systematic part. And so we're hoping to demystify some of that and hopefully give some support to that process. Because once you have that visa, mama, you're off and ready to go.
yes, yes.
Truly.
Exactly. So how about we start with, because we've both lived in multiple countries, so
Mhm.
we've had to go through a couple of different visa processes, some easier than others. So I would, how about you start? Because you've lived in, outside of the United States, three different.
Three places now. Yeah. So I lived in Newcastle, Australia for like 6 months. So that was a stint with a study abroad program. And then I lived in Paris for a year, where I was working, working. Yes, it was hard work as an au pair, but also studying French at that point. And then now I'm living and working and thriving in Denmark.
Okay. How about we start with Newcastle, Australia, the Oz.
Australia. Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. Yeah, so Australia was incredible. I still need to get back there, honestly. But I will say my into most of my travel experiences has been education. And I still think that that is probably as far as rules and regulations and what you have to prove when you're applying for these visas, education is usually the easiest. Now, of course, granted that you can get into the program, you can afford a program, all of that good stuff. But as far as the visa processes, I've had a type of education visa in all three of those places, and they've always been the most streamlined processes. So if you can make it work, the education route is always I found to be an easier visa to get. This could also be like internships, education, or what's it called, work abroad or working holidays visas. Those types of visas, especially if you're like looking to kind of try out the area, is also a nice way to kind of pivot and go through. And to that point, au pair visas are also a nice way, if that's of course what you're looking to do. A really cool way to experience a culture and a family and just kind of dive into to a new space. So yeah, education I feel like has been, or study visas as they're often called, are the really easy ones process wise. I will say one snafu coming from America and Australia and most of Europe is that I almost got my visa and my passport essentially denied because on my visa application, my birthday is December 4th. Shout out to the Sages. And I put naturally 12/04/1990.
Uh-huh.
But if anybody knows, in Australia and in Europe, they do their dates kind of backwards, or shouldn't say backwards. They put their the days and then the month and then the year. As in America, we put the month, the day, and the year. Anyway, my visa and passport came back, and my birthday was April 12th, and that was incorrect. And so I had to get like a what's it called, expedited process through. So, rule of thumb, check your birth dates when you're applying, because I've actually heard it's happened to many people before. So, one just note there. But again, once you usually have your systems in order, it's really just saying that you've been accepted to the university, that you can afford to basically move there, get there, that you have a flight, and that's usually what you have to show for a study visa. So, again, pretty streamlined. you'll find, I'm sure, as we get into the other types of visas you can get.
Yeah, I can rant on about study. And I'm so happy that you said that study visas are generally the easiest kind of visa to get. I'm
Yeah,
currently in Spain on a study visa, a year-long study visa.
amazing.
It gave me just enough time to figure out, hey, is this somewhere that I want to live long term, that I would like to invest into a longer or slightly more complicated visa, while also learning. I've only lived in Spanish-speaking countries. So I'm like, okay, is and also let it be known for those of you who don't know, not all Spanish is the same. I know that this kind of goes without saying, but a lot of people might not know this.
Mhm.
European Spanish is very different than Caribbean
Mexican
Spanish, which is
Spanish,
very
yeah.
different than Central American Spanish, which is very different than South American Spanish, which is very different than Afro-Caribbean Spanish. Like there's a lot of different Spanish out
Hmm.
there, guys. But yeah, being here on a study visa, it's while still complicated because it's Spain, was the easiest visa to get. I'll get
Yeah,
more into that later.
yeah.
But so was it for both Australia and France that you were on study visas, or was it like a mix of study slash au
So
pair?
yeah, so France was a special visa that's literally for au pair, and Denmark actually has one too. So it's a special kind of stipulation to say, hey, you've gotten a contract with a family that you're going to stay at this point. And again, the biggest thing that you have to secure is like the connection with the family, getting that contract. And it's really almost like a joint application because they have to provide information that they're going to, give you room and board, that they're going to pay you this much, basically just outlining so that you can get, of course, taken care of during that process. And then there's, of course, insurance that you can also buy to kind of help with that. Again, give you a little bit more of a support system there. But yeah, so the au pair visa is special because it's covering that job essentially and that work, but also covering your well-being there and making sure that you will be paid enough to sustain yourself in that country. And then also many au pairs, I'm not positive, but I would say most of those visas are attached to having to do some schooling for the language of wherever you're going to be. So part of that was that we had to do, I think it was like at least 10 or 20 or something, so many hours of French study while we were au pairing, weekly or monthly. I honestly forget. Unfortunately, my French has been completely collapsed by my Danish at this point. But yeah, so it's a special visa for that. Again, an easier process because as far as the application, it's really just then figuring out the family and all of the other stuff, putting it together, cheaper, and yeah, much easier, I would say. Probably as easy, if not easier than the study visas, I would say.
There's specific websites that you used for these visas. I'm assuming it varies from country to country, but like, is there a specific portal that you need or like a website or stuff like that?
Yeah, I don't have for Australia and France. I have Denmark up, but honestly, most of them are going to be like the consulates or the visa processes. Every country is going to have a different page, and it's usually pretty easy to find, but maybe that's something I'm happy to share if there's like specifics that the audience is looking for. We can do like a quick haul of some links. But if you look up like how to apply for visa in whatever country, you'll get to one basic space that's going to have most of the information, and usually it will have a portal in itself that you apply through. So for Denmark, for example, it's called New i Denmark or new to Denmark.dk. DK. And so that's like the site that has all of the application information and where you also apply. So I would say all countries that at least I've experienced and gone through the process has that type of like landmark website. And it usually isn't too difficult to find for each country.
Okay, cool. Um, we'll compile a list below of just
Yeah,
some of these. If you got, or at least
yeah,
for the countries that we are in, we'll include them in the description below. So give a look for those if any of that sounds interesting to you. Um,
yeah.
so when you came to Denmark, um, you said that you had multiple visas since you've moved
Yes.
to Denmark. What can you name some and give us some?
Just name drop some of my visas. Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Yeah, no. So I originally came. I think I had said my story in the last episode. I forget. But I originally came on a study visa. So I did my master's in Denmark. So that again was a study or an education visa. So I got into the program, sent them like, yes, I'll be starting and doing this for 2 years. So that's the visa I had for 2 years. And also with that visa, it allowed me to work, I think, again, like no more than 20 hours a week, I believe. And for Americans, that's usually how it fits for our visas here.
Quick
Um,
question. So
yeah, of
you were
course.
allowed to work 20 hours a week, like work in Denmark for a Danish company or work abroad, like work
Danish
remote.
company.
Really? Oh, that's
Or
different.
remotely. I
Okay.
also started my own business too here. So, and I was doing that on my visas as well. So yeah, you're able as a student to still work at, I think it's no more than 20 while you're studying full time. And then if you're doing part time, you can work a little bit more. And in the summers and stuff, it adjusts. So it's pretty clear in Denmark, but I will say I am the one, like they probably know my name at like the visa office. Cause I'm like, hey, just to double check, I was like, you would not catch me slipping and like getting my visa revoked or getting in trouble. So I always would message their like contact us, and they've always been really responsive, at least to me. So I will say that like it's always better to over ask than to guess with visa and regulations and work regulations and things. So yeah, I had a study visa for 2 years, and then Denmark does this really cool thing called a establishment card visa. Don't really know about the title, but basically it says if you've done your higher education in Denmark, you basically get another year to see if you want to stay here to basically help you get a job or for you to do some projects. So it's basically another like extension of your study visa, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So I had that establishment card for a year after I studied. So after I stopped studying. And at that time, I was doing internships during while I was studying and also working part time. So during that
Additional
establishment,
question.
yeah, of course.
How long was your study visa? Sometimes they're like 3 months, 6 months, a year. Was yours longer?
Mine was for my whole program, so for 2 years.
Nice. Okay.
So it was nice. And then basically before that was expired, I could already apply for my establishment card. So once I was done with education, I think they even give you I think, but I want to say they give you 6 months after you end studying to also just like see if you can again get another work visa, get something. And then during that time, I was able to apply for that establishment card. And I believe that gave me 1 year
Mhm.
to look for something else, basically, to basically pad your time so you can get another visa, really,
Mhm.
another way, which is what I did. So I then was looking to get a what is it called? Family reunification visa. Because me and my partner have been together at that point, it was still like 7 or 8 years and we've lived together and all that stuff. And he's Danish. There's a visa where you can basically hop on and I could basically get a visa because we're in a relationship. The nice thing about Denmark is that it's essentially a marriage visa, but you don't have to be married. You just have to show that you've lived together. I think it's for about 4 years. One person has to have like strong ties to that country, aka Denmark. And then I had to do my Danish lessons, make sure I was making a certain amount of money. You sometimes have to put a big collateral up. So, like a big portion of money from my partner, evidently, that would say, hey, in case something goes wrong with her, she has to have any support or Danish support. This is the chunk of money. It's almost like a deposit, essentially,
Mhm.
to say that I'm not just going to be like living off of it and not making money.
Mhm.
So that was something we were prepared to do. But right in time, literally like a month before I was planning to apply, I was offered a full time job. And so then I have a work visa. And that work visa is basically, I think it's actually for as long as you have the work. So as long as you don't change that job, you just have that visa attached essentially to that position. But they also give some nice grace where it's like if you are let go or if you leave a job, you still have, I think, 3 to 6 months after to look for another job to get another work visa or whichever. And you can also get a work visa for self employment, which was also something I've done before. I started another business, so I kind of had that as like a backup in case the family reunification visa didn't work and I didn't get full time work, that I could also apply with my own business as well.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So in hearing this, I'm learning things
Yeah.
because when it comes to One, Spain has something similar, but it's not a marriage visa. We call it the
Hmm.
pareja visit, the partner visit. Um,
Yes. Okay.
yeah,
Cute.
it is, there is a specific way to work it that I have seen work for people, but if you use it in the way that, in my experience, it's risky to use it in the way that it was intended to use. What do I mean by this?
Hmm.
So parejas, like you don't have to live together for X amount of time. You could just claim somebody as your partner and be like, oh, they're my partner, and thus they get basically residency, like
Huh. Okay.
residency in Spain, for as long as you say, as long as you guys are together.
Together. Yeah.
The people that I know that have, it's risky to do it when you are romantic partners because there's no like legal connection, like you're not married. So like I've known I know one person that was actually in the process of doing this, and I did not know that she was in an abusive relationship. Um,
Hmm.
and there are other people that I've heard after the fact say, yeah, this is not what I should have done. Just because
Mm-hmm.
once you
I could see
start
that.
that process and once you get it, it's really like you kind of have to stay with the person. You can't
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
And the person that's fronting for this visa, they know that. So the people that I know that have gotten it, that it has worked out the best for, are people that have gotten it as very good friends. Um,
I think that's the safest probably for that type of visa if you're not sure. Because yeah, it's your livelihood that's hooked on this relationship. So you would want to be sure about it.
Yeah, yeah. It's gets messy. Um,
Yeah.
so there's that, but also when it comes to like the other visa opportunities and being able to switch in between visas, it's
Hmm.
seeming like different countries in the EU have different leniencies for these visas.
Yeah.
Like, or Spain, when you're done with your student visa, get out. Like,
Bye. There's the door,
here's
bitch.
the boot, you know? But it's and I'm just like,
Oh my
wow, okay,
God.
I really, which is why now I'm in the process of trying to figure out, okay, so what comes next after Spain?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, do I want to drop this info now? No, I told you, but I'm like, I'm gonna wait to
Little
tell
sneak
people. I'm gonna wait
peek.
to
Little
tell the other
sneak
folks
peek.
because I'm not gonna be in Spain after this, but I know where I'm going to be after. And
Yeah.
starting like the stuff for that visa process now because there isn't that grace period when you're done with your student visa here in Spain.
Yeah.
And also, you're not allowed to work for Spanish companies while you're in school here. Nope. If you're gonna work, I am allowed to work, but
Interesting.
I have to work from the United States or from an international company. I'm not allowed to work in Spain at all as a
It's
student
so
with an
interesting.
American passport. If you're from the
It's just,
EU, you could work, but
yeah. And that's also something to know. You'll probably, encounter a lot of like EU versus this. And this is where it's like you realize that to this point of like the cultural, political, like ugh, of things where it's like, oh, some visas are easier for other people, some visas aren't. Some people have to jump through these hoops, some people don't. Some people get paid to study, some people don't. Some people are encouraged to stay in the country, some people are kicked out. Like it's just interesting how this plays out, even just within the EU, because Denmark is very much like, we want, they're a smaller country, they're like, we want you to stay, but you're going to learn our language, you're going to benefit us. Like, and basically it's smart because they're like, well, you did your higher education here, so we trained you, so like we'd like to take some of those skills and have you here if we can, right? So it's both benefiting them but also nice for the person. It's like, yeah, I do want to stay in Denmark. But it's just interesting because I've heard this about Spain too, and just some of the policies and things where it's like they're not catering to the international audience really. Like they're not trying to have that. They're kind of like, we'll deal with y'all if we need to. It
yeah.
sounds like. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, kinda. The bureaucracy of getting your visa in Spain, I don't know a single person that has not cried in the visa process
Yeah.
of getting your
Yeah.
visa in Spain. It is it is stressful in the way that like one, I do not recommend going through any visa process without a lawyer, abogado. Like you need to look for your
Hmm.
abogado before you come to Spain. Because trying to navigate the visa process on your own is basically impossible. Like I'm not going to say basically impossible. It is stressful to the point where you will miss deadlines. So having a international lawyer to go into the portals to navigate it, they have translators that they already work with because all of the
Yeah.
documents have to be translated.
Yeah.
They like, but there's still
Translation. Yeah.
translation. I
I forgot about that part. That's yeah. If you're working in a different language, translation, you're gonna have to get all of your like what's it called? Transcripts, job bits, translation, and notifying. What is it called?
apostille,
Notarize.
notarized.
Notarizing.
Hmm.
Get familiar with the law, honey, because you're
Ye-
and localization, because
Yes.
it's gonna be a part of the process.
Yes, and don't think that just because you know Danish and that just because you know French or just because you know Spanish that you can translate it.
It's
Nope,
not that type.
not
It's
that
not the
type.
one. And
Mm-mm.
you're not the one, and that's okay. We
Yeah,
don't need you to be the one. That's why you get an international lawyer. That's why you get a translator.
literally, literally. Like there were people that came to Spain from Spanish speaking countries, and like sometimes they and you know what? That's a whole other thing that I will touch on in a second. But even they have to get an official translation because there are official
Yeah.
translators and they
Yeah.
like sign something that says, or they have a document that says, I'm an official translator for Spain. Because once again, different Spanishes. And then there's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
legalese Spanish. So like you have to get that, and then sometimes you have to get that, whatever it is, notarized or get an apostille for that. And for those of you who don't know, an apostille, which is basically it is a document that says that the document that you have submitted is
Mm-hmm.
real. But the apostille also has to be in Spanish. And
Of course.
there are some space like online spaces that are able to do that. Like I'm so grateful that I found this website that can give you an apostille in Spanish via like they can email it to you.
Ugh.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
amount of things I was faxing at this point, I said
Ooh.
fax.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. That's also I think Spain maybe. I know Germany and some other European countries love some hard paper. So get used to having like a fax or um mailing things in because they love to have the physical, and that's
Mhm.
something that like it can be jarring, especially I would say from Americans where a lot of things are done digitally, right? But sometimes you are going to need that paper trail. So
Yeah. Yeah. Some people like I recognize that the lawyers that the what is it called? The law firm that I use, they love a digital copy. They love a digital
uh,
copy. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Now the issue, and I will say this until the ends of time. I had a man as my lawyer, and that was the beginning of all of my problems. And then I had a man as my lawyer, and that was the end of all of my problems. No, that was the continuation of all of my
the
problems.
continuation.
The
Yeah.
end of
Yeah.
all of my problems was that he happened to get an intern, brilliant woman. And I started working with the intern because I cried enough consistently to be like, you are making me cry in class. Because what do you mean this isn't done? What do you mean that this is the
And
wrong?
he's like, emotions, I'll hand you to my lady intern. No,
And
I
he
can't.
he was also like, Shayna, like you basically saying, Shayna, you need to be nicer to me because I'm doing my best. You're doing your best. You told
This
me
is your
months
best.
later that I had the wrong criminal background check. I can't get this in Spain. I was in the US for months, and you tell me today.
If we're
So
being honest, if we root down to every issue, it all has come from the seed of a man, I feel. I fear. I'm so sorry to say it, but
it, I would love to be proven wrong. I say this, you have not heard my theory about the
give me
balls.
facts.
I would love to be proven
Oh,
wrong about the balls. I would love to be proven wrong about men in general. Unfortunately, I have been given no evidence contrary to what I know to be.
I'm I'm proven to soften sometimes my opinion because I have a beautiful, loving man in my home, and yet still source of my problems. Source of many of them, not all of them, a good portion.
I have
Love them.
wonderful male friends. Wonderful. Angel babies.
Wonderful male energy around me. Still,
I
We'll leave it at that. Visas. So
Visas,
visas.
visas. If you can get, not to say that all women lawyers or all femme lawyers or all queer lawyers are perfect and great at their job, but let me tell you something. If you
Just
can, if you can choose to get a woman as your within the firm that you work for as your immigration lawyer, I would recommend it. Personally,
as most lawyers, helpers at the visa
doctors,
desk, it's a phenomenon, and
yeah.
I'm going for the femme. I'm going for the queen. They've always supported me, and I will always support them. So, life hack, visa hack, go for the femme.
Yeah, find the non-male and just run with it. The non-man and just run
Yeah.
towards. Okay, so with that, there was another thing that I recognized as you were talking, and it's gone. Um,
Oh, I talked a lot.
mm,
Apologies on that
and
one.
it's gone. It's okay. I'm gonna take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the visas that I've had.
Mhm.
And then we can and then hop in my whole
Yeah.
brain. So I left the United States and I said, and I just bought myself a one-way ticket. Now, there is another kind of visa that generally are shorter form visas, but if you do your research and you know which countries, you can get long-term stays on tourist visas.
Yes. Yes.
I lived in Mexico for 6 months. Now, with what's going on in the United States, this might be changing very soon. Also, the Mexican government has gotten a lot more strict about letting people in and making sure that people are leaving at the appropriate time. Once upon a time, people were just overstaying their 6 month visas, which is already incredibly generous.
Yeah.
Overstaying their 6 month visas or doing like border runs and hopping back in a day, a week later, just to restart the cycle. Mexico is getting a lot stricter about that for obvious and honestly good reasons. If you're going to be staying in
Mhm.
Mexico that long, you might as well apply for a proper visa, residency, pay taxes for all of the like things that you are getting access to.
Mhm.
Because Mexican healthcare, dentists in Mexico, sorry, getting off topic. 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10.
We'll get back to the medical tourism. That's another episode.
That is a
That's another
whole
episode.
other
That's
episode
another series.
because the you don't realize how ghetto the US is until you get medical care somewhere else.
It's so good. It's just like the way we are scraping and screaming for like a little bit. And it's like,
Thank you for
there's your
my
medicine.
whole beans of
Here's
healthcare.
here's your appointment. No, what money? What? I don't think I've ever pulled out my wallet at the doctor here, and I've been here for 8 years. Never pulled out a kroner to the doctor.
When I
It's
was
insane.
when I was in Mexico, this is brief, and then we'll make a whole other
We're
video.
getting back to visas. I promise.
Yes, we're getting right back to visas. When I was in Mexico, I was in between, I had like 36 hours in between two press trips. This was not my smartest move, but I had something like lodged in my tooth and I was like, I don't know what this is. So I just looked up dentists near me and there was one that seemed to be pretty like highly rated. I walked over, I walk inside, like first they were like, okay, like we'll pay for, ooh, you know what, Shayna, I just got the 10-minute marker. I'm gonna say this real quick, hopping right back into visas. Long story
Yeah.
short, hop in, they they get the thing out. They're like, ooh, actually, your cavity, your like filling was done incorrectly, and you have a giant cavity under there. We could take
Oh,
care of that
yes.
now if you want. I was like, you know what? Might as well. I'll just be
I'm in the
notating
chair.
up on the plane. Just take care of it. They go, mind you, state of the art, everything, everything. They go, they clean it out. Also, everybody there spoke English and Spanish, probably other languages too. They go, they clean it out, Novocaine, X-rays, all of this stuff. $60 for for a quick, no appointment. Just walked in. $60. Best, and then they did a cleaning on top of that. $60.
All you needed was 36 hours. Actually, you said I just had a quick dental appointment. Don't mind me.
Come on, man.
$60. It's
Yeah.
fine.
So
Oh my
that,
God. It's just I love that for you. I love that for
oh,
Mexico.
Okay, visas. So, for Mexico, you could stay in Mexico for up to 6 months. We'll see how long that lasts. That's what I did. There are other countries that you are actually able to stay for 6 months or longer. Albania, you could go on a tourist visa for a year.
Oh
There
my
are,
gosh.
yes,
I'm
and
like, wait a second.
yes. There's a bunch of ways to figure this out. You just have to plan ahead. So I
Yeah,
stayed in Mexico for 6 months and I was like, this is going to be more than enough time for me to figure out if this is a country that I would like to spend even more time in. Love Mexico, 10 out of 10. I just felt like I think I need to be somewhere else. I don't know where, but I think my time here is coming to a close for this chapter of my life.
yeah.
So then I go to Spain. Spent a 3-month tourist visa, which for the EU, you get 3 months as a US citizen. I was like, okay,
Hmm.
I like it enough. I want to spend longer. Then I get my student visa while I am here. Um, there are a number of other visas that are available, but the student visa was recommended for people that, are trying to figure it out, see if Spain is
Yeah,
something you'd like to be a little bit longer. And
definitely.
the easiest one to get. I use air quotes because it's still stressful.
Yeah.
But technically the easiest one to get outside of the pareja. And I'm like, I don't know. I knew people that were kind of open to it, but also their intentions were funky. And I'm like, this is too risky.
Yeah, it's
Too risky.
that's risky.
Also, men. And I was like, it's okay. I'm gonna just learn something. It'll be
Trust me, if you don't have to, don't attach yourself to it.
just
That's why I think honestly the work visa, I was like, thank you, gotta go. And now I can do my own residency visa. So that's the one I'm doing next. So like my permanent residency. But yeah, even that was like itchy. And we've been together for a while, but I was still like, ooh, the feeling of like my livelihood be kind of being attached to also that relationship and another person. You want to be sure about it. That's all I'm
yeah.
saying. You want to
It's
be sure.
always risky. It's always risky. So I
Yeah.
I also love the way that you approached that. Like, because you really want to make sure, especially when you are living abroad, moving abroad, you want to make sure that you have as much like legally, bureaucratically under your control. It's not in somebody
Yeah.
else's who has like,
Yeah. Because
mm,
so many things can already go. And to your point, all of this information, unfortunately, could be outdated in a few months when America keeps popping off and countries react. Like, so this is where you really want to look at these sites, and we'll again compile a collection, but like look at these sites and stay tuned because things will change. And I've seen them just in the 8 years I've been in Denmark, where like certain sometimes it's gotten easier, sometimes it's gotten harder. And like this is the thing of looking at the world and like other countries will react in these ways of visa regulations, in requirements. So just keep an eye on those things. But yes, the short stay visas as well is also good to know for, I think it's most of EU that's like 90 days. Usually it's
mm.
like the customary that you can stay for a
Oh my
shorter
God.
time.
Don't want to cut you off. And
No.
with what is going on in the United States, there are a number of countries, and I've like been talking about this on the page for a while, mostly as like
Yeah.
predictions, it's just like what I'm seeing coming down the aisle.
The
But
pipeline. Yeah.
I'm seeing it happen more and more where countries are going to be are currently opening up uh more refugee status to
I was
marginalized.
I was just looking because I was like, now the bonus visa is this asylum visa because I've been saying, Shayna, I've
Mhm.
been saying probably the last year, I was like, I wonder how many more years it's going to take for that American citizens can apply for this asylum visa because I'm looking at Denmark right now and it's still pretty open. Let me actually continue your thought and
Cool, cool, cool.
I'll read the stipulations.
Just give me a ping when you found it. Because like these were things that I was thinking about and then but thinking about it, I'm like, oh, okay, this is probably going to happen definitely within the year, but I was thinking probably around the summer, maybe. No, this is happening right now as we speak. It's starting in Canada. There are a number
Mm-hmm.
of queer people that I know that have been reaching out to me asking about, hey, what are the opportunities? Like, is there a move that we can make to Spain? Spain is incredibly queer friendly. And yes, there are slowly opportunities, not to say that Spain has one just yet. I think they were using like the education visa to
Yeah.
make the move.
To
And
bring,
then
yeah.
for asylum while they are here, which is also possible. But we're seeing these kinds of things happen more and more. Canada is a prime example, but there are other countries that will absolutely be opening up in this way. Do I think you should wait for that? No,
No.
do not wait for that. But if that is something that you are concerned about, as a travel journalist, I've been seeing the patterns. And because of how quickly the administration is moving, these patterns are patterning faster than faster than I thought they would be happening.
Yeah. And here's the thing is I was looking, so I found it for Denmark. You can be granted a residence permit as a refugee if the UN Refugee Convention applies to your or to your situation. This could be the case if you have a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group or political opinion, and you are outside of the country of your nationality. So, from what I'm reading here, is that it's kind of a case by case basis. And if someone, a queer friend of mine, came to stay for 3 months, right, the 90 days that they can stay, and didn't want to go home and could make a case, and there's no like, and this is where sometimes it's kind of like you have to read between the lines and also just try, because I've tried for certain visas. I almost tried to get I forget the exact title, but a visa because now I have a child here. And I was basically saying, like, I have a child here, I'm in a relationship here, I've lived here, so I have stronger ties to Denmark now. Could I just get a visa based on that? And they were like, well, you already work, you do this, like, basically this is for a visa if you have no other options, but you do have a child, you do have that support system. And I'm like, okay, great. So I'm not even in that much need of it, but the way that that is actually separated, and that there's an option for people like that, is still encouraging. So I love that you've brought this up. It was something that's been on my mind, and I'm like, I don't think it will be very long until we see more of these countries being explicit about saying we're accepting cases from Americans coming in as refugees,
Yes,
specifically, again, marginalized people coming in as refugees from the
yes.
States.
And I'm thinking that Canada is really setting the trend strongly, and that not
Yeah.
just, oh, okay, Americans from marginalized groups coming in as refugees, but also opening up pathways for immediate work. There are pathways in Canada where you could go. This is a whole other video, but
Yeah.
you go into Canada, they are looking for doctors, they are looking for nurses, they are looking for teachers
Yeah.
and educators, they are looking for social workers, they are looking for people in blue collar jobs with hard skills, like tangible skills.
Yeah.
They're
That's a good point.
very vocal about this. And these are occupations that are being taken for granted in the United States that are like people want people who work in these spaces. So I
That's a
think
good one. Also for work visas, if you have, I think it's kind of like high skilled labor or like
yes.
skilled labor visas. So
Mhm.
in some of these, and each country will usually have a list of, like, to your point, who they're looking for, what types of positions they're working for. So if you have one of those skills or trades, look into those visas too, because that can actually like expedite your visa process as well.
Yes. Oh my God. I feel like we could go on with these for more because I also just thought about like there's like this weird like, oh, buy a house here visa. It'll be buy a house for $1. We'll give you free. There's a lot of fine print in that. I wouldn't run with that.
Yeah.
But we can
Don't,
talk about that on another day. If y'all have any
yeah,
questions,
you're
go to the
welcome.
Patreon. Also, you and I will talk about said Patreon. Go to the Patreon, ask your questions over there. They will be getting priority. You could also include them here, but just know that it's going to be, that's just